Welcome to the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast, the podcast that travels back into time to review classic episodes of Jim Crockett Promotions' Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling as it appears on the NBC Universal streaming service Peacock, as well as internationally on the WWE Network. I am Mike Sempervive, joined by Roman Gomez, and we welcome you along on our voyage in reviewing these classic shows. We have social media on several platforms, although the Twitter and YouTube accounts are the most active. Just search at Mid-Atlantic Pod and look for our logo. And if you want to follow along with us but don't have access to Peacock or the network, you can still do so by the way of David Taub's write-ups of these old Mid-Atlantic shows available at the mighty midatlanticgateway.com. Today in episode 39, we take a look at the television that was taped on Wednesday, October 13th, 1982 at the WPCQ Studios, Channel 36 in Charlotte, North Carolina, and began airing in local markets beginning the weekend of Saturday, October 16th. And as I bring in my co-host Roman Gomez, I will alert everyone that I believe this may be one of, if not the shortest show we have ever done. It is certainly the least amount of audio I have ever cut out of a show, and that's not to say that this was a poor wrestling show by any means, but usually when we cut a lot of audio, it's because the show's backbone has got to do mostly with the promos and where guys would be going and who they would be facing. But in this case, Roman, this time around, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling let the wrestling do the talking.
Yeah, this was a very different type of episode. And at the beginning, when they announced the matches, I was like, good heavens. It was like an all-star show. It was incredible. And Mike, if I can go ahead and jump ahead on my version, it started off with Flair versus Tsuruta from Japan.
Yeah, that was a very interesting thing. And, as usual, we got Bob Caudle introducing the show. But if you're watching the Peacock or network version, you get the feeling that something was heavily edited at both the beginning and at the end. It just felt very jagged the way that they decided to show Bob Caudle and then go to break and then come back for the first match. And I wasn't sure why that was. And I was thinking to myself, well, Ric Flair is coming back into the area. Did they do something locally that they talked about maybe Richmond or Charlotte or Greensboro that for whatever reason didn't stand up to the test of time? But Roman, that wasn't the case, as some of these shows that were actually put up on the old WWE Classics actually has what they ended up cutting out later on, which was Ric Flair and Jumbo Tsuruta.
Yeah, this match had Flair as the NWA Heavyweight Champion against Tsuruta, and it was disappointing in the fact that it was joined in progress. They only showed about 2 minutes. I realized they couldn't have shown all 20 or 30 minutes, however long they went, but they only showed 2 minutes, and it was definitely to put the shine on Ric Flair. The clips they showed, he dominated. He had Flair had Tsuruta in the figure four. Tsuruta went for the ropes. Flair pulled them back into the center, and Flair actually got a victory using the figure four.
An absolute rarity. It's like, he would win with it on TV, but, usually when put in a position of great power, he wasn't out winning with the figure four leg lock. You know what I mean? It was like him trying to hit the splash off the top ropes. It never really worked for Rick. And, that it sounded like Bill Watts put that thing together for for the Crockett's there to showcase Ric Flair, who would be coming back in the area to defend his NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Wahoo McDaniel. As Wahoo had alluded to last week, Flair would be coming in to also face off against Jack Briscoe, and interestingly enough, neither Briscoe or Wahoo McDaniel was actually on this show. It was carried by some other people, including the revitalized tag team scene in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, our new champions, Sgt Slaughter and Don Kernodle, and their main competition, at least in the fans' eyes, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. And we get Steamboat and Youngblood on this show, although it's in singles matches. And Roman, at the beginning of the show, you talked about how this felt like an all-star presentation, and we got that right off the bat with Dory Funk Jr.'s $100,000 Golden Challenge, whoever he faces has 10 minutes to pin his shoulders to the mat, and if they can collect his money. And this time around, it ain't Keith Larson. Funk's got a big step up in class. It is Jay Youngblood.
And to see this match on free TV, and like you said, it was definitely a step up in class. And this was a good match with lots of back and forth action. And at one point, Dory hit 7 of those uppercuts in a row. And I had mentioned last week, that he threw one of the best uppercuts in the business. So for him to throw 7 in a row, that was pretty cool. And the finish came when Dory put the spinning toe hold, grabbed the top rope for leverage, getting the pinfall. And Steamboat, who was at ringside, ran in and executed an inside cradle on Dory while Youngblood counted to 3. And I thought that was kind of cool because it showed that Steamboat could, in fact, beat the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And they kept emphasizing how Dory said nobody could beat him in 10 minutes, but yet Steamboat beat him in 10 seconds.
Absolutely. It became a talking point for the rest of the show, and the referee making that count, Stu Schwartz, and that's who our guy in stripes was, or at least the solid shirt was for the day, and he was leaning in, looking at Youngblood's shoulders on the mat, right up against the ropes as Dory Funk Jr. just leaned over him and held on to the top ropes. And, of course, that upset Steamboat, who came into the ring. And during the match, it was announced that Steamboat would end up facing Jos LeDuc later on in the program. In fact, right after this match, he would. And mentioned the uppercuts. That uppercut versus chop battle, which ultimately Youngblood won, was about 3.5 minutes into the match. And it was really good. And everything Funk tried, right down to the spinning toe hold, Youngblood had an answer for. And the match went in total about 7.5 minutes. And as you mentioned, Dory got out of a headlock with a back suplex, got a little bit more aggressive, delivered an elbow smash, and then used that spinning toe hold, leaned on the ropes, and got out of there as the heel that he was before the 10 minutes ended up coming up. And everything that he tried just did not work against Jay Youngblood, except for cheating, which, of course, is the thing that you got to do sometimes if you're a heel, not if you're Youngblood or Steamboat, of course. And that, of course, upset Ricky Steamboat, who ended up fighting Dory Funk Jr. off after Dory attacked him. And so I'll go ahead and play the finish of the match here so you can hear how all of this went down between Dory Funk Jr., Jay Youngblood, and Ricky Steamboat.
Every effort and going to wrap up the 100 grand. Oh, Funk was going to sling him off of the ropes. Youngblood had that headlock locked in so tight he kept it right in. Funk came back with a suplex. That was a good counter on the part of Dory Funk. Elbow smash coming off of the ropes. Youngblood has caught some tremendous blows. Again with that spinning toe hold, this time near the rope. And he pinned him near the ropes, and Steamboat now complaining to referee Stu Schwartz that Funk had the top rope and he had the pressure. And Funk now attacks Steamboat as they slug it out. He's got Funk rolled up, pinned, 1, 2, 3. Well, one thing for sure, Rick Steamboat proved right there that he very definitely could pin him.
Funk said, anybody beating him in 10 minutes with my partner just beat him in 10 seconds, Bob, for 100 grand.
That's right, it only took him. Look at Dory Funk. And it only took you, as Jay Youngblood said, 10 seconds, Rick.
And there you hear from Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood after Dory Funk Jr.'s nefarious victory. Steamboat fighting him off, getting the small package roll-up, which Stu Schwartz counted. There was no real reason to do that other than to pop the crowd and make Dory Funk Jr. very, very upset. But Ricky Steamboat gets a victory before he gets in the ring to go for a victory against the television champion Jos LeDuc, with Sir Oliver Humperdink in his corner. During this match, Bob ran down the rest of the card, and much like the previous match, this was dominated by the babyface. And, of course, we talk about Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood as a team every week, Roman, and them giving their opposition so much, especially in the case of Ricky Steamboat because, my God, he was so great at selling and he enhanced the match, and it was always fantastic. Here is a case where in the first match, Dory Funk Jr. on the ropes against Jay Youngblood, and in this match with Jos LeDuc, Ricky Steamboat really getting the best of him for almost the entire length of time as the first match.
Yeah, and I thought this was a good matchup in the sense that you had mentioned Steamboat selling, and I have mentioned in the past about LeDuc, like what a hard hitter he was. So it's like it was just a good pairing. You have a hard hitter against a guy that sells, and I think that, like when Bret Hart would wrestle The Undertaker, you got the excellence of execution against a guy that doesn't sell. So to me, that wasn't a good matchup, but these two, just the combination of these two in the TV title, this was a good match to watch.
Absolutely. And, an ugly guy against the Adonis that is Steamboat. So just a great visual as the fans heckled Sir Oliver Humperdink during the match. And at about the 7.5 minute mark, Steamboat was trying to turn LeDuc over into a Boston Crab when Dory Funk Jr. hit the ring and ended up causing the disqualification, and the two ganged up on Steamboat until it was Jay Youngblood's turn to come in and make the save. So certainly not a disappointing finish, played into what you had going on with Steamboat and Dory Funk Jr., but now one would assume, as we watch this match and this show in a vacuum, that it's Ricky Steamboat's turn to go after $100,000 from the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion.
But, they did something there that made sense. That was which was so fun about wrestling back then. Steamboat pinned Dory, so Dory tries to get revenge and attack Steamboat. It's just so basic, but it made sense. And just thinking about this, Mike, like how this show has gone so far, you started off, depending on what version you have, but the version I have, you started off with Flair, the current NWA champion. Then you go to a match with Dory, a former NWA champion. And then the next match is Steamboat, who would be a future NWA champion. My gosh, Mid-Atlantic was just loaded.
Absolutely loaded territory. And you look at all the names that weren't on this show. Slaughter was on the show, but he wasn't in the ring. Valentine wasn't on this show. Flair wasn't on this show. Paul Jones wasn't on this show. Wahoo wasn't on this show. Jack Briscoe wasn't on this show. Jerry Briscoe wasn't on. You go on and on and on. And it's an amazing time right now. And it's even more amazing when you think about the fact that the territory was down compared to how it had been in previous years when the 77 to about 1980-81, when they were really peaking with Flair and Steamboat on top and everything they had going on there. The Paul Jones turn, the Greg Valentine breaking Wahoo's leg. It was one thing after another where they were just incredibly successful. And one of the people that was a focal point at that time was Gene Anderson, who, of course, was teamed up with Ole Anderson, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, multiple-time NWA World Tag Team Champions. And in lieu of the local promo, we got Gene Anderson and Private Jim Nelson. And I wouldn't necessarily have cut this audio, but I'm playing this for two reasons. Number one, hey, there was a reason that Ole Anderson did the promos, but it was still nice every once in a while to hear from Gene. He was the original Anderson, for heaven's sakes. And two, we've heard from Sgt Slaughter and the recently discharged Don Kernodle a whole lot, but one thing we haven't heard yet was from Kernodle's former partner and still his stablemate, Jim Nelson.
With us right here, one half of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, of course, Gene Anderson and Big Jim Nelson right here.
Bob. I got to go in the ring, and I'm wrestling this young, snotty-nosed kid.
He's a whale of an athlete. He's a tremendous wrestler.
I have to admit, he's from Syracuse. He's a hell of a wrestler.
That's right.
Hell of an amateur wrestler. What you people know about the Minnesota Wrecking Crew that we can do. I don't care who they are. We know how to wrestle. We're not a snotty-nosed kid. We've wrestled a few years, and we like to hurt the wrestlers. And I don't care. Time, we went in there, we punch, kick, we wrestle them, we grab a hold, and make a punishment. And we're going to find this kid, Mike Rotundo, right here in the ring, who's the toughest. You can count your money on. It's going to be me.
I tell you, and I think you might be in for a surprise if we
We'll find out about it right here.
All right, talking about surprises. Of course, you're not gonna get a surprise against Johnny Weaver. Here's an outstanding veteran.
Yeah.
And you talking about having your work cut out for you.
Johnny
Boy,
Weaver. Yeah, the pencil neck hillbilly Johnny Weaver with his sleeper hold. Well, you're gonna find out how your sleeper hold is when you get in the ring with me, because I got that cobra hold, Johnny Weaver. And you say you got a little grudge against me because of something I did you in Canada. Will you come on out here, Johnny Weaver? You're going to get your chance out here in the ring, and let's see if you can take me down. Let's see if you can get that sleep hold on me. There's no way you're going to do it. And I'm going to enjoy watching this match with this Mike Rotundo against Gene Anderson, because I think Mike Rotundo's bitten off just a little bit more than he can chew. He's taking on one of the greatest wrestlers, as far as I'm concerned, tag team wrestlers, Gene Anderson, one half of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. And Mike Rotundo's going to find out what pain is all about, because Gene Anderson might just take his arm, he might just tear it out of the socket, he'll twist it every way. And Mike Rotundo, you won't be wrestling too much, because when Gene Anderson gets done with you, that's going to be it. And I'll tell you what about the Slaughter Army getting the World Tag Team belts, huh? They thought they was going to run us out of here. They thought they got rid of Sgt Slaughter when he got suspended. But they saw what happened. Sgt Slaughter and Don Kernodle are the World Tag Team Champions. I tell you what, it's going to take one great team to take those belts away from them, but I don't think there's a team today. Jay Youngblood, Ricky Steamboat, you got your work cut out for you. You want those World Tag Team belts, come after them. I don't think you'll get them.
All right, fans, that's it.
And that was it, which is probably a good thing, because you heard the private kind of running out of gas there at the end. But, hey, Gene Anderson carried the first part very well. You know, there would be times where it was tough to listen to Gene after the stroke and all that sort of stuff, and it's, you know, we're going to get to a note about his age here in a moment, Roman. But Private Jim Nelson, we finally get to hear from him. And right now, everything still sounds rosy, at least on the surface, in Camp Slaughter.
Yeah, but unfortunately, as time will tell, he gets kind of pushed aside a little bit.
He does indeed, and I guess maybe you could even say that some of this starts on this episode, because he faces off against Johnny Weaver a little bit later on, and as history will tell us, Johnny Weaver plays a part in this whole story on the road to Greensboro, but we don't want to jump ahead too much yet here, as you heard Jim Nelson talk about. He did cross paths with Johnny Weaver for Frank Tunney in Toronto. That's because Johnny Weaver did a lot of the booking, and he was a big fan of Kernodle and a big fan of Jim Nelson, and that's going to continue all the way through 1984. But this is pretty much when Nelson and Kernodle were peaking up there, which makes sense at the time that, you know, they were doing battle with Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. But we do get our next match, Gene Anderson against Mike Rotundo, Syracuse University, wearing a neck roll off of the football team. This was due to the injuries suffered at the hands of Leroy Brown last week when he was attacked and pile-driven after his match. This is it's a ridiculous visual. It was then. In hindsight, it is as well. This is not the full neck brace that you usually think about, the big foam neck brace. It looks like a NFL 80s, early 80s nose tackle, just the thin neck brace. There were usually two of them. There was one that was like it was like a toilet seat around your neck, and then there was like the one that looked like a swimmer floaty that you would have, or like, you know, just something that, you know, what do they call those things? They just stink down the sink or whatever, but, you know, you just kind of bend them, and that's what this thing looked like, right around the neck of Mike Rotundo. As I poorly explain this, you'll just have to see it. In fact, you know what? That might be the picture I use for the for the show, so everybody can see what it is, Roman. But hey, you got to sell the injury, I guess. And I guess Mike Rotundo wasn't a big fan of wearing the traditional neck brace, so they went with this idea that, I don't know, visually wasn't good.
No, my first thought when I saw it was he looked like he was going to go on a long-distance flight. You know, he had one of those neck pillows or something. It did not look good, and kind of surprised that they didn't try to do something in this match where Gene would, you know, stomp on his head or kick him in the neck, or, you know, the guy's got an obvious, you know, storyline injury of a neck, and Gene, you know, being the heel he was, he thought he would have went for the neck, and Didn't really happen.
Well, he did a little bit. He was wrenching on the neck and things like that. I guess it wasn't a consistent attack as, he was going after limbs more, which he was known to do, but he was going after. In fact, he got admonished by Stu Schwartz at one point because he was pulling on the neck brace, so not allowed to do that. So he was upset over that. But yeah, I mean, it was mostly limb work as it usually was from Gene Anderson. And it's amazing because to me, watching this match, because on October 4th, 1982, Gene Anderson turned 43 years old. He looks like he is in his late 50s in this match.
At least.
It's crazy. It is crazy to think about how young he was when he started going into the decline that he had. Man, it was something else. And of course, Ole Anderson has talked to that, about that at length when he came to Gene, but was able to maintain his strength, his grip strength. It was able to come back after the stroke, at least, on one side, at least. All the stories we hear about him putting a Tongan death grip, a shoot Tongan death grip on guys, including the Barbarian, to drive them to their knees. And, he wasn't able to do that in kayfabe form here against Mike Rotundo, as Mike Rotundo reversed the small package for the victory in about 6 minutes and 35 seconds. Good work from both guys. The purpose was served. Give Rotundo a little bit of time in the ring with a vet that can make him look good and ultimately get the victory, and that is what happened. Rotundo then joined Bob at the announce desk to talk about getting beat up by Leroy Brown last week, and they play a quick clip of him getting pile-driven. Rotundo is real ready to throw to a pre-taped interview with Jimmy Valiant, but was too early, so Bob kind of helped him fill a little bit more time before the interview with the Boogie Woogie Man played. And Jimmy Valiant was, I don't know where he was. He said he was in New York City, but the reality was he was in front of a backdrop, so I don't know if he was in Memphis on the the Nashville Alive studios or something like that. I have no idea what this was, but the Boogeyman was talking, and he was talking about the House of Humperdink, and he's going to be coming back next week looking for revenge and looking for his title and getting that back for the people.
It's with Leroy Brown, and I'm sure all the people are as excited about it as I am, and I just can't wait to get in the ring.
All right,
my day with Leroy
talking
Brown.
about
Home, let's say, people, brothers and sisters, welcome to my home, New York City, the big light, the big apple. Yeah, I'm not able to be here this week, but I'm sending this special tape in from my own city, brother, New York City, because something's on my mind. And I'm talking about Humperdink, and I'm talking about LeDuc. You know they tried to cut my hair. You know they broke the Boogeyman's music. You know they stole the belt. I said if I beat Ivan Koloff, that belt didn't belong to the Boogeyman. It belonged to my people. Well, people, let me tell you something. I'm coming back next week. I'll be here in person, and I'm going to get the job done. So, Humperdink, I got a surprise for you, and Mr. LeDuc, look out, because your good is dead.
Mike, the House of Humperdink is causing everybody problems.
Yeah,
looks like.
we got Steamboat and Youngblood that are now newly tagged up, going against Slaughter and Kernodle, who are the world tag team champions right now. And there's been all kinds of confrontations on every side of the fence with Humperdink.
Right. Fans, that's it right here at ringside.
So there we hear from the Boogeyman, Jimmy Valiant, swearing revenge on the House of Humperdink, and of course the big Canadian lumberjack, Jos LeDuc. Ironically enough, even though the Boogeyman was very angry about losing the NWA Mid-Atlantic Television Championship, in Canada, Jimmy Valiant was still the NWA Mid-Atlantic Television Champion, the Canadian TV champion up there, which was kind of funny because on Mid-Atlantic TV down here, Jos LeDuc, as the Mid-Atlantic Television champion, was carrying around the Canadian Heavyweight Championship belt. So all of these wacky things taking place, Ivan Koloff still on the Boogeyman's mind, even though he was out of the territory proper right now. He would still go to Toronto and continue his feud with Valiant, which was very powerful up there. It's one of those feuds in Toronto that does not get a whole lot of attention and Valiant's popularity at the time because it fits between the WWF opening up and running up there and between the time that it was really peaking with Steamboat and Flair on top. But still, impressive performances by Jimmy Valiant, the same way he was in the local territory circuit as well. And He's back looking for revenge, Roman. So beware. The music. That's the big question. Will the music be back at some point?
Yeah, hopefully he gets a new boombox since Christmas is around the corner. But Mike, just watching this whole interview thing just seemed very weird with the edits. You know, they interview Rotundo, and it seemed like they abruptly went to Valiant. And like you said, they had that Nashville background or whatever that was, and then they come back to Rotundo for some reason, and then he's talking, and then Kernodle says, "Fans, that's it for now." And you can see Rotundo's got this like frustrated look on his face, like he had more to say. Just that whole interview thing just seemed off all the way around with the editing, and it didn't come off real smooth.
I think Rotundo can blame himself on that because, you know, he tried to throw it to that break, and you could see Kernodle looking at the clock as this is going on, because it seemed like they were going to have that thing queued up, obviously going live to tape, and it seemed like, okay, he had to fill a little bit more time, but then Rotundo kept going. So then, you know, they basically just cut it off with the tape playing. And then at the very end, the same way, they were going to throw it to Kernodle, was supposed to stop the interview and immediately go into announcing the next match and giving our introductions. And what ended up happening was Rotundo went a little long again, which made Kernodle cut him off. So this was just another misadventure of Mike Rotundo on the microphone, even though compared to usual, he was probably as fired up as he's ever been. But that is not a high bar, unfortunately, when it comes to the alum from Syracuse University, a school known for its communications department, just not in the case of Mike Rotundo, who, again, had that wacky neck brace as well, too. But it was then time for our next match that Bob Kernodle went on to introduce, which was one half of the World Tag Team Champions, Don Kernodle against Glenn Lane. Sgt Slaughter joined Bob at the commentary podium. Match went about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Kernodle got the victory with a cannon clothesline from the second turnbuckle. Sgt Slaughter putting over Don Kernodle the entire match, which of course was not very long right there. Only 3 minutes or so, Roman, but an impressive performance by Kernodle, who once again is established as something more than what he was. He may not be on the par of Sgt Slaughter, but he certainly belongs in his company because Sgt Slaughter is telling you he is.
Yeah, and Kernodle did some good amateur moves in this match. And like you said, Slaughter put him over on commentary, especially when he said that Kernodle took the fall over in Tokyo when they won the titles. So he really put him over.
Absolutely. They have said that time and time and time again, and it is the truth. Well, it's not the truth because they didn't win the titles in Japan, but they came back saying, hey, Don Kernodle took the deciding fall with a cannon clothesline. They have focused on that clothesline week after week. Sgt Slaughter has had a chance to get victories in tag team matches, but he has tagged out to let Kernodle get the victory, being brought up to Slaughter's level, being brought up to World Tag Team Championship status, where he would remain when it came to Jim Crockett Promotions for the next several years after that, Roman. But it was then on to Johnny Weaver joining Bob Kernodle for another in lieu of promo. He basically is just there to fill time as an old vet. You know, he's been an announcer. He does announcing often on Worldwide Wrestling, occasionally here on Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Roman. And my gosh, you know, when you talk about scars on the forehead, you think of Perro Aguayo, you think of Abdul the Butcher, of course. But one of the names that doesn't get mentioned enough, Johnny Weaver, the buzzsaw, who looked like he had a couple of buzzsaws rubbed up against his forehead in the last, at this point in his days, 25-year career at this point.
Yeah, and Mike, I swear I've said this once, I've said it before, you must be looking at my notes. I've got some of the same stuff. I had mentioned, too, on that interview, like, obviously they had some time to kill because that interview really did not go anywhere. It was all over the place. You know, he talked about Flair, he talked about Valiant, Jones, really didn't talk a whole bunch about himself or what he was hoping to accomplish, but he was talking about others, they were just killing time with that interview.
Absolutely. And in fact, he Kernodle at the end, hey, tell me a little bit about the House of Humperdink and what those guys are doing. It was just, as a local promo was playing to talk about Ric Flair facing off against Jack Briscoe somewhere in Richmond, they had to fill a little bit of time, and Johnny Weaver had the next match. We already heard from Jim Nelson, so it was Weaver's time up to talk about what was going on and put everybody else over before he got in the ring against Private Jim Nelson. And at this point, Sir Oliver Humperdink joined Bob at the desk to explain some things that are going on with him, including why Dory Funk Jr. jumped in there on Ricky's Steamboat. It didn't take a whole long time for this match. Roman only went about 2 minutes. Nelson tried for the Cobra, finally got it, but Weaver bucked him off and ended up rolling him up in about 1 minute and 43 seconds. So Humperdink then had to scatter really quick because not only was Johnny Weaver getting out of the ring, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood came walking up. So he got out of there, and he gave Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood a chance to crow about their victory a little bit earlier on, and gave Johnny Weaver a chance to kind of take a shot at the Marines and take a shot at Private Nelson here. And again, as history will tell us, maybe this is something we should take note of.
Humperdink couldn't get out of here quick enough when Rick Steamboat and Jay Youngblood came walking in, Rick.
Well, as you notice, that he'll take a powder real quick when none of his army and none of the House of Humperdink are around him.
When Dory Funk coming in and interfering in that match like that.
That's true. Something I'd like to say very quickly. Sgt Slaughter, I heard mentioned earlier about the fact that myself and Jay Youngblood were hot on the trail after Don Kernodle and Sgt Slaughter. That's correct. You hit it right on the head of the nail, because that's what we've been talking about now for several months, that we were trying to get together and been working at it very diligently to get our tag team combination down to challenge these guys, or challenge whoever is going to be the World Tag Team Champions. They went over to Tokyo, they brought the belts back, and now we've been challenging them, and we've been putting up a fight, boy, and they're starting to feel it, starting to feel some of that wear and tear.
All right, and Jay Youngblood. Jay, first of all, you were very, very close several times to $100,000 up there.
Yeah. Well, I was also very close to losing. I can say my pride, but if it wasn't for Rick, I had no idea the man had his hands on the rope. Well, Funk, if that's the way you want to play, brother, we'll play the same way. You say anybody can beat you in 10 minutes. Well, this man beat you in 10 seconds. How do you like that? That's right, Rick. You beat him in 10 seconds. Now, Kernodle, and you, Sgt Slaughter, now you know that Youngblood and Steamboat are a thorn in your side, brother. And we're going to keep on digging until you give us a chance for those world belts, and we're going to beat you right in the middle for them, believe us.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, Rick Steamboat, Jay Youngblood.
I'm just going to go ahead and stop that right there real quick, just to note to everybody. He said Funk, like Dory Funk Jr. But yeah, so just wanted to note that right there, because boy, that was an iffy one from Jay, who kind of started kind of iffy right there with the whole thing about almost losing and then almost losing his pride. And boy, if you have the network, you'll be able to see the faces that Ricky Steamboat makes, and God bless right there. But I'll go ahead and hit play again here as Johnny Weaver joins Bob to end the show.
And Johnny Weaver, Johnny, I tell you, man, you went up there and bam, 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 Johnny.
Well, I just wanted to show that Kernodle and Slaughter's camp, I think there's a little leak in your camp right now. People are getting beat around here faster than you can turn on the TV. The $100,000 man got beat. Steamboat beat him in 10 seconds. Nelson just got beat here. There's a lot of guys around here right now that are in trouble, and they sure weren't the three people that's been on this interview. It's you guys right out there and into the House of Humperdink. And don't think we're not looking into the House of Humperdink, especially one Woogie man. You did a lot to him. You thought he had no friends who would come and stand beside him, but you found out that there's a lot of guys that come and stand beside the Woogie man. And those world belts, they're just glad they're back, because Steamboat and Youngblood are going to blow right down your neck. And if one of them's busy, I'll sure step in there with the one that's not busy. And we'll see if we just can't get those belts away from you and make sure that they stay around here where they belong.
And there we reach the end of the episode. Johnny Weaver closing things out alongside Bob Caudle. Also heard from Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat and Roman. Jay would have moments there of lapses, was not as super smooth as Ricky Steamboat on the mic or Ric Flair or somebody like that. At times he was worse than others, especially as 1984, 1985 came around, but a little bit of a slip up there, was able to catch himself, tried to save it the best way he could, but not the best. But I guess, the point gets across, and when you're as popular as Jay Youngblood is, hey, the fans don't care. It makes sense to them.
Exactly, and it's sad. He was definitely somebody that was gone way too soon, and, it makes you wonder what could have happened in his career had he not passed away. It's sad, but, through the magic of DVDs and videotapes and the network and everything, he was a fun guy to watch. I'm glad we have footage to see of him.
The stuff with Ricky Steamboat that just gets better and better as time goes along, but we're going to have to wait for things to go along as we have reached the end of this episode. Like I mentioned, it was a very good wrestling episode of the show, Roman, but again, not a whole lot to banter about because there was not a whole lot of banter. The action took, the precedence in the ring, and they continued to move a whole lot of things forward, as well as locally, if you were watching this at the time, you also had Ric Flair coming back into the area, which, as you mentioned, they did note when Jumbo Tsuruta, they showed that match from Japan at the initial part of the episode that unfortunately is not available on the network.
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to have to go through Roman's video vault and see if I've got that match somewhere, because after getting teased with that little 2-minute clip, I definitely want to see the whole thing now.
Coming up on October 20th for the television that will air all over the place, October 23rd, 1982, the only WWE preview we have right now is that Paul Jones challenges Jack Briscoe for the Mid-Atlantic television title. But after I get done these results, you will find out that there is a lot more that Roman and I will be covering on the next edition of the Mid-Atlantic Championship podcast. The worldwide wrestling results that were taped the same day that this edition of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling was taped. On that show, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood defeated Jim Dalton and Private Nelson. Mike Rotundo defeated Leroy Brown by disqualification, and Jos LeDuc defeated Glenn Lane. On October 14th, Thursday, Winston-Salem, North Carolina at Memorial Coliseum, Jimmy Valiant defeated Jos LeDuc by DQ. Private Nelson defeated Ron Ritchie. Paul Jones defeated Mike Rotundo. Leroy Brown defeated Johnny Weaver. And Princess Victoria and Velvet McIntyre defeated Leilani Kai and Peggy Lee. Also that night in Norfolk at the Scope, Porkchop Cash and King Parsons defeated Jim Dalton and Ken Timms. Sgt Slaughter and Don Kernodle defeated Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. Wahoo McDaniel defeated Dory Funk Jr., and NWA World Champion Ric Flair returned to defeated Jack Briscoe. NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair returned, defeating Jack Briscoe. The next night, Friday night in Richmond at the Coliseum, Greg Valentine defeated Mike Rotundo, Jack Briscoe defeated Paul Jones, Sgt Slaughter and Private Kernodle defeated Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat, and Ric Flair defeated Wahoo McDaniel by disqualification. That same night in Charleston at County Hall, saw Jimmy Valiant face off against Jos LeDuc. Porkchop Cash, King Parsons, and Johnny Weaver were scheduled against Leroy Brown, Gene Anderson, and Oliver Humperdink, and Princess Victoria was scheduled to face off against Leilani Kai. Saturday night, Hampton Coliseum, Jimmy Valiant defeated Jos LeDuc, Wahoo McDaniel defeated Greg Valentine, and Leroy Brown and Gene Anderson defeated Porkchop Cash and King Parsons. During an afternoon show on October 17th in Charlotte, NWA World Champion Ric Flair battled Roddy Piper to a double disqualification. Greg Valentine was a substitute for Sgt Slaughter in a losing effort against Wahoo McDaniel. Paul Jones defeated Jack Briscoe. Jimmy Valiant defeated Jos LeDuc. Dory Funk Jr. defeated Mike Rotundo. Gene Anderson defeated King Parsons. And Mike Davis defeated Bill White. The reason I'm giving you the entire card there is because I'm going to give you the entire card for the next two shows just to show you the depth the Mid-Atlantic actually had on display. Up in Toronto at Maple Leaf Gardens in an evening show, Rudy Kay battled Private Nelson to a 15-minute draw. Terry Kay defeated Ken Timms. Swede Hansen defeated Tim Gerard. Salvatore Bellomo defeated Charlie Fulton. Johnny Weaver defeated Leo Burke. Buddy Rose defeated Nick DiCarlo. Jimmy Valiant defeated Ivan Koloff to win the NWA Mid-Atlantic Television Championship as recognized all over Maple Leaf Wrestling. That took place in a New York street fight. And NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair defeated Dory Funk Jr. Also that night, in Savannah, Georgia at the Civic Center, Sgt. Slaughter and Private Kernodle defeated Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat. Wahoo McDaniel defeated Greg Valentine. Jack Briscoe defeated Paul Jones. Leroy Brown defeated Porkchop Cash. Keith Larson defeated Juan Reynoso. And Ron Ritchie defeated Jim Dalton. On the 18th in Greenville at Memorial Auditorium, Wahoo McDaniel defeated Greg Valentine. Sgt. Slaughter and Private Kernodle defeated Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat by disqualification. And Jack Briscoe defeated Paul Jones in a no disqualification match to win the NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship. On October 19th in Raleigh at the Civic Center, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood defeated Sgt. Slaughter and Private Kernodle in a Texas death match. Mike Rotundo defeated Gene Anderson. Johnny Weaver and King Parsons defeated Private Nelson and Juan Reynoso. Also that same night in Columbia, South Carolina at Township Auditorium, Leroy Brown defeated Porkchop Cash. Jerry Briscoe defeated Greg Valentine. Jack Briscoe defeated Paul Jones. And Jimmy Valiant defeated Jos LeDuc. And that takes us back around to Wednesday, October 20th, 1982. WPCQ Studios, Charlotte, North Carolina. The tapings of Worldwide Wrestling and Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And we get a very vague description of next week's program from the WWE Network / Peacock. October 23rd, 1982. Paul Jones challenges Jack Briscoe for the Mid-Atlantic Television title. We know that is not true. It is the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship. And Jack Briscoe will be walking in as the champion for the first time for most of the audience who didn't get a chance to see him defeat Paul Jones only days earlier. Also on the show, Greg Valentine, Jimmy Valiant, Jerry Briscoe, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, and more.
As I mentioned earlier on, if you like this show and would like to connect with it more, I invite you to follow us on all of our forms of social media, especially our Twitter. Just search @MidAtlanticPod and look for the logo. And also, please support all of the shows here on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. We don't condescend, and we are dedicated to preserving and accurately archiving the history of professional wrestling. And I'm proud that this show, produced by me, can be a part of that. For Roman Gomez, I'm Mike Sempervive. Take us home, Uncle Bob.
There's that'll do it for this week. See you next week, and until then, so long for now.